The rain started at exactly 2:13 a.m. Daniel knew the time because he hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. His eyes were dry, burning, but every time he tried to close them, the same thing happened. The sound, a phone ringing, not his phone, something older, distant, hollow. He sat up in his small apartment, heart thumping in a slow, uneasy rhythm. The room was dark except for the faint blue glow of his laptop screen. Still open on his desk, the sound came again. Daniel froze. It wasn't coming from outside. It wasn't from a neighbor. It was inside his apartment. At first, he thought it was his imagination. Sleep deprivation does strange things to the brain. That's what his doctor had told him last week when he complained about hearing noises. But this wasn't random. The ringing had a pattern, a pause, then again. He stood up slowly, every movement careful, like he was afraid to disturb something invisible in the air. His apartment was small, just a living room, a kitchen, and a bedroom. There was nowhere for the sound to hide, and yet it echoed, not loudly, but deeply, like it wasn't coming from this world. He checked his phone, no missed calls, no notifications, nothing. Still, the ringing continued. This time he followed it, step by step, through the narrow hallway, toward the closet. The closet door was slightly open. Daniel was sure he had closed it earlier. A cold feeling crept into his chest, the kind that doesn't come from temperature, but from instinct. He reached out slowly and pulled the door open. Inside, nothing. Just old boxes, a suitcase, dust, and then the sound exploded inside the closet, louder than before. Daniel jumped back, hitting the wall. His breathing turned shallow. The ringing wasn't just coming from the closet. It was coming from inside one of the boxes. He hesitated. Every part of him told him not to touch it, but curiosity, or something darker, pushed him forward. He knelt down and opened the box. Inside, buried under old clothes, was something strange. An old telephone, not a mobile phone. A landline, yellowed with age, dust covered. The cord twisted and brittle. And yet, it was ringing. Daniel stared at it in disbelief. There was no way it could be working. It wasn't even plugged in still. The sound felt heavier now. Almost urgent, like whoever, or whatever, was calling didn't have much time. Daniel reached for it. His hand trembled. "Don't," he whispered to himself, but his fingers didn't listen. He picked up the receiver. The ringing stopped instantly. Silence. For a moment, there was nothing, just his breathing then. A voice. "Hello?" It was faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. Daniel swallowed hard. "Hello," he replied. Static crackled, then the voice came again. "You picked up." It sounded like a woman, weak, terrified. Daniel's heart raced. "Who is this?" No answer. Just heavy breathing on the other end. Then, "Please, help me." A chill ran down his spine. "Where are you?" The line crackled violently, like something was interfering. "Room 307. Daniel frowned. "What? He's coming." The voice broke into quiet sobs. "You have to hurry." The line went dead. Daniel stood there, frozen, the receiver still pressed against his ear. Then, click. The call ended. He slowly lowered the phone. His mind raced. Rougham 307? What did that even mean? This had to be a prank. Or a hallucination. It had to be. But something didn't feel right, the fear in her voice. It was real. Too real to ignore. Daniel placed the phone back in the box. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, the phone started ringing again. He didn't hesitate this time. He picked it up immediately. "Hello?" The same voice, more desperate now. "Why didn't you come?" Daniel's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know where you are." "Room 307. Her voice trembled. "He's here." A new sound came through the line. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, getting closer. The woman began whispering frantically. "Please don't let him find me." Daniel's grip tightened. "Who is he?" No answer. Just the footsteps, louder, closer. Then a door creaked open. The woman gasped. And then a deep voice, not on Daniel's end, on hers. "Found you." The line went silent. Then a scream, cut off instantly. Daniel dropped the receiver. It hit the floor with a dull thud. For several seconds, he couldn't move. His body felt numb. His mind refused to process what had just happened. Finally, he bent down and picked up the phone again. "Hello?" Nothing. No static. No breathing. Just silence. He slowly placed it back in the box. But one question kept echoing in his mind. Room 307. Daniel grabbed his laptop and searched hotels, apartments, buildings nearby. Anything with a room 307. And then he found it, an old hotel. Just a few blocks away. Closed years ago. Abandoned. His chest tightened. There was no way, but still. 30 minutes later, Daniel stood outside the building. The rain poured harder now, soaking through his jacket. The hotel loomed in front of him. Dark, broken. Dead, the sign above the entrance flickered weakly. Most of the letters were gone. Only a few remained. Hotel. Daniel hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to leave. But something else, something stronger, pulled him forward. The front door creaked as he pushed it open. The smell hit him immediately. Rot mold. Decay. The lobby was in ruins. Furniture overturned. Walls cracked. Ceiling partially collapsed. And yet, there was something else. A feeling like he wasn't alone. Daniel stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him. He spun around, but there was no one there then. The sound echoed through the building. Daniel's blood ran cold. It was the same phone, the same sound. But this time, it wasn't coming from a box. It was coming from upstairs. He looked toward the staircase. Dark, endless. The ringing continued. Daniel swallowed hard. Then he started walking. Each step creaked loudly beneath his feet. The air grew colder as he climbed. The sound grew louder. Second floor, still ringing. Third floor, the sound stopped. Silence filled the hallway. Daniel looked around. The corridor stretched in both directions. Doors lined the walls. Most were broken. Some hung open. But one door stood out. Asterisk 307. The number was barely visible. Scratched into the wood. Daniel approached slowly. His heart pounded violently in his chest. He reached for the handle. Paused. Then he opened it. The room was dark and purple. Except a phone sitting on a small table in the center. Daniel stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him. The phone rang. He stared at it, frozen. Then, slowly, he picked it up. "Hello?" The voice came instantly. "You're too late." Daniel's breath caught. "What?" The voice changed. No longer weak, no longer scared. Now, it sounded wrong. "He found me. A long pause, then a whisper. And now, something moved behind Daniel. He turned slowly. The door was gone, and in its place, a figure stood, tall, still watching. Its face wasn't a face, just darkness. The voice on the phone whispered one last time, "He's found you too." The line went dead, and the room went silent. The next morning, the police found the hotel exactly as it had been for years. Abandoned, forgotten. There was no sign of Daniel, no footprints. No evidence, nothing, except one thing in room 307. An old telephone. And if you listen closely, sometimes, late at night, it still rings.